WHGE 95.3 FM coming up, the open eye. Hey, Sherry. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, nah, you wasn't late. I'm late again. We gotta fix this door in here so I can get in. All right. Let's get them started.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or easily dictate. We do so because the chains of oppression in our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, here to get that third eye open. Yes, indeed. Oh, I got some stuff for you today. It might have been a factor in me being a little late today, but I'm here, and you know what I say. If I'm here, I'm on time. It's going to be. All right, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And boy, is that needed. Let me get my disclaimer out the way here. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on the Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right, let's get them started. Yes, indeed. It's been a hell of a week. Oh, wait a minute, got a little feedback there. There we go. All right. I saw this, I think it was on TikTok or somewhere. I saw this and I thought it was a lot of truth in it. Very interesting. Black people are the only group of people that can reproduce themselves with everybody. This is not true of other groups. Other groups can only reproduce themselves with each other. That's why you ain't never going to be able to get rid of black people. We going to be here. Because ain't nothing stronger than the black gene. It made me think of the girl used to talk about them Europeans. I can't remember. Cynthia, I think that was her name. She used to say, and these people had struggle genes. And you know what? There's a lot of truth to that. Struggle genes. That's why our women are queens. Let me tell you, they always have been. It's not new. It's not new, I'm telling you. Egyptian women. See, you know what? Here's the thing. You see what's going on. You hear these white nationalists and what have you calling for women's right to vote to be revoked. They don't think women, they think they should decide. Yeah, I saw one of them say that he would decide for the whole family what the vote would be. He would go cast the vote and what have you. Mm-hmm. We were not like that. If we behave like that, it's learned behavior. Because all the way back to ancient times, all the way back to Kemet, our women had education and careers. Just for instance, in Kemet, women who took people into their service took women The men took men into their service. Maids were for mistresses. Manservants were for the master of the house. What's up, Jafar? I see you, bro. Sexual segregation seems to be widespread, even in the temples. It was mostly women who served goddesses and men who served gods. Some of the job titles women could hold were supervisor of the cloth, supervisor of the wig workshop, supervisor to the dancers of the pharaoh, and supervisors of the harem of the pharaoh. From this, it is known that these were female-linked occupations because females were in managerial type roles. One Kemetic woman, Lady Nebet, even managed to get to the powerful position of vizier, the right-hand man of the pharaoh. But it is known that her husband performed the duties of this role. Other women managed to become stewards and treasurers. All right? They were not limited to the occupations that their sex dictated. Queen Chai, one of the most powerful women in Kenya. That's why we have to revere our women, because our history shouts that black women has been the key to our survival in the oppressed African colony in America. Who possesses the eloquence to sufficiently express how important the Nubian queen is and has been to the black man in America? She is our mother, our primary nurturer, and first teacher. She is our sister. She sacrificed her dignity, body, and soul to save us from the master's whip and noose. She is the most suitable woman for marriage. For who else can understand our frustrated, oppressed spirit and soothe our tattered soul? The Nubian queen is the field from which the black man must produce our future. It is for these aforementioned reasons the black man should become incensed whenever we see black women not afforded the respect and dignity commensurate with her contribution to our survival, to our people's survival. Yeah, I know you want her. I don't blame you. She can change your life with her smile. Even when being modest, her walk can stop traffic. She can look at you and make you drop to your knees and thank the Creator you're a man. Her embrace is paradise. There is no one else like her. God, I love the black woman. All right, moving right along here. Let's get here to America. You often hear people talk about the so-called founding fathers. These European Americans in political power in the U.S. should stop comparing themselves to the so-called founding fathers, especially we as Democrats that won't speak up. They ain't got no fire. Washington, Jefferson, and Madison, Monroe, Burr, and the rest of them. You know what? They would have executed Trump. Yeah, and most of the insurrectionists, some congressmen, and a Supreme Court justice or two, and a few senators. You don't think so? Remember who these men were. Aaron Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Jefferson purportedly shot a man on the White House lawn. And remember, I don't know if you know about the Whiskey Rebellion, look it up. But George Washington, the so-called father of the country, first president, he shut down the Whiskey Rebellion with swift and fatal authority. Hey, the peaceful transfer of power, that was sacred to them. Trump would not have got as far as he did with the so-called founding fathers. Once Trump supporters marched on the Capitol and he put a hit on his own vice president, the jig would have been up. The so-called founding fathers would have wrapped this up before the end of January 2021. The peaceful transfer of power, like I said, was sacred to racists or not. The point is, Trump's attempted coup would have been stopped. Trump was indeed white-lashed to Obama. But this flame was lit by white supremacists, deity, Ronald Reagan. They roasted him, made the devil sodomizing with a pitchfork. Of course, Reagan was the resentful response to the civil rights movement and black power. He made it socially acceptable to be racist and put in motion the conditions for the rise of the tangerine tyrant. The election of Obama blew the lid off, even though he was very much right of center politically, not the least bit progressive, and actually quite cowardly on racial issues. Yeah, but the founding fathers would have took that ass bigger than big. WHGE 95.3 FM, Open Eye. All right, WHGE 95.3 FM. Yeah. Here is something, I don't think I've really ever discussed this, but I've seen it enough and have participated in discussions about it off the air. And that's about slavery in the Bible. You know, it's something that people are waking up. You know, I mentioned last week, I saw this black minister talking about tithing. Right? And one of the craziest things he said to me, that I heard him say, one of the craziest thing was, don't be out there giving money to poor people and people out on the street. God's not going to bless you for that. Really? Really? Bring your money on in the church and put it in the collection plate. And then that way your blessings will multiply. See, these are the same creeps that would have been up during slavery time telling people crap like, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect. Because it says so in Ephesians 6:5. Obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their masters and yours in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. That's from the New Testament. Oh, don't get it mixed in the Old Testament. All right? In Deuteronomy, okay, it says that a runaway slave should not be handed back to their master, but should live wherever they choose. In Exodus, that passage talks about the beating of slaves, stating that if a master strikes a slave and the slave dies, immediately the master should be punished. However, if the slave survives a day or two, the master is not punished, for the slave is his money. And this is in the Bible. In Colossians, it urges slaves to obey their masters as you would the Lord, and the master provides slaves with what is right and fair. In Timothy, All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. And then those of you that are Christian wonder how those that reject Christianity could do so. Because these passages from the Bible even quote Jesus, and especially Paul. It's no wonder you get some of our people that are in Christianity have no what's the word I'm looking for here? No compunction to address global white supremacy, because they are obeying their earthly masters. Damn. Wake up. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dope and I. All right. Third Eye Optometrist Patrice Gibbs here. As we watch these white nationalist plans come through, and the silliness of people who have voted against their own interests, let's be clear about the choices that have been made here. When you raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans, no one dies. And when you cut Social Security and Medicare, people die. And see, their whole thing is they want to reverse all the gains made in the 20th century. They hate even the memory or mention of FDR. I remember a right-wing Republican telling me that when he was a boy in the 50s, it didn't just start. His father would come home, take all the change out of his pocket, and all the Roosevelt dimes he would throw on the floor. He didn't want them, because Roosevelt did things to help people. Even though, that didn't include black people. But at least he addressed the common man, in spite of his racism. We should measure the prosperity of a nation not by the number of millionaires, but by the absence of poverty, the prevalence of health, the efficiency of the public schools, and the number of people who can and do read worthwhile books. That's from W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, it is now highly feasible to take care of everybody on earth at a higher standard of living than have ever been known. It no longer has to be you or me. Selfishness is unnecessary. Wars should be obsolete. It's a matter of converting the high technology from weaponry to livingry. It's from Buckminster Fuller. Of course, there's always been abundance. There's always been enough for everybody to survive. They had this ideal, and this is one of the passages out of the Bible. A man that doesn't work doesn't eat. And what if a man's unable to work? You see, it's unnecessary. But we in our DNA understand this because we come from a society, an environment of abundance. Where the European comes from an environment of scarcity, an abundance of lack. An environment of lack. Okay? Whereas competition just to survive. All the other peoples throughout the world didn't come from that type of environment. Came from an environment where Ubuntu was all over the globe. I am because we are. Yeah. Something the European will never understand. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right, moving right along. Okay, so guy I've quoted on here a couple of times, Jorge the Vanguard. Oh, you want to hear? Do you remember the people saying, "Oh, you want to hear somebody talk bad about white people?" And you listen to Malcolm and Martin. Or you want to hear somebody talk bad about Europeans? Listen to Jorge the Vanguard. And the crazy thing is, he breaks it down with facts. You know, he's not bringing you no falsehood. He's telling you the real deal. And he pointed out, Europeans never understood engineering. They understood monuments to themselves. They understood props for propaganda. They understood how to stack stone into a crown and call it civilization. But the crown rocks when the weather changes, and the only blueprint they ever had was theft. They never grasped that true engineering is not just the assembly of parts. It's the assembly of principles. The harmonizing of matter and meaning. Some of the things stand not just for decades, but for centuries, without a single prayer to maintenance. Africans engineered entire river systems to bend to their will without killing the fish. Egyptians tuned temples so that the sound of a single voice could be heard 50 yards away without echoing off the wrong wall. Mayans aligned their pyramids to the movement of stars with such precision that modern astronomers will scratch their heads. Chinese engineers designed suspension bridges centuries before Europeans even had the metallurgy to dream of them. Indian metallurgists forged metal that has resisted rust for over 1,600 years. Meanwhile, Europeans were digging trenches through peat bogs, wondering why their buildings sank like bread and soup. Oh yeah, they brag about Gothic cathedrals as if they invented heaven's architecture. With the flying buttress, it's just them trying to keep their walls from falling over because they never learned how to distribute weight like the comet at Ankara. They tout their industrial revolution like it's a miracle, but all they engineered was coal dust, children's lungs, and rivers that caught fire. They see concrete as their innovation, but Rome copied it from older civilizations. And the modern European version crumbles in decades, while ancient mixes from Africa, the Americas, and Asia still stand untouched by erosion. The Polynesians engineered navigation systems from swell and curve of the ocean itself. European Europeans engineered the founding of entire fleets because they thought the sun was a compass. The Incas engineered rope bridges that survived centuries of wind and rain. Europeans built iron bridges that collapsed under the weight of their own overestimation. The Yoruba engineered urban planning before urban was even a word. Europeans engineered alleyways designed to spread disease through their slums because to them, engineering never was about harmony, it was about control. All right, Ruth, I see you, sister. And control requires nothing to live longer than its owner. That's why they love things that break. It forces dependency. It demands replacement. It turns every gear into a leash. They never built to last, they built to own. And now the gears are slipping. The scaffolds are bending. The empire's bolts are rattling loose. And the rest of the world still has blueprints made from memory, math, and respect. When Europe's concrete turns to dust, the bridges of our ancestors will still stand, still carry, still sing. The memory of our understanding of engineering. Oh, WHGE 95.3 FM. Overnight. All right. Hey. Sure y'all pay attention. Remember the young man in Florida, the 22-year-old Will McNeil Jr., who was sitting in his car, minding his business. He got pulled. No, he wasn't sitting in his car. He got pulled over. Basically for being a black man on a sunny day. They claimed he was, what do you call that? He didn't have his headlights on. That's what it was. Because it had rained a little bit. It wasn't dark. Okay? So they demanded he get out his car, broke the window, punched him in the face, beat him up. All right? Bust his window out, pulled him out the car, and yes, excuse me, one of those black men, one of those police officers was a black man. What I tell you, lying out on that uniform, don't give his pigmentation no consideration. Now, what these cops did, especially the one that punched him in the face, because he was the main one beating on him, even though the rest of them joined in. Because after they pulled him out the car and they claimed that he was resisting arrest. Oh yeah, they punched him in. That one cop punched him in the face again. He was not resisting. He was not fighting back. When he was in the car, you could see his hands. They claimed there was a knife on the floor of the passenger side, and that he was reaching for it. That's why they busted the window and pulled him out the car. He was not. I saw the video, as hard as it was to watch. Now, what do? We investigated ourselves and decided we didn't do anything wrong. Because that cop that did that should have been charged. But the investigative memo from the state attorney's office, from the 4th Judicial Circuit of Florida, is little more than an attempt to justify the actions of Officer Bowers and his fellow officers after the fact. Frankly, we expect nothing less, especially after Sheriff Waters announced their conclusion more than 3 weeks before the report was issued. Since they are unwilling to seek justice, we have to request that the U.S. Department of Justice investigate this incident, and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Of course, we know that's real shaky considering the Department of Justice, who has been led by now. Yeah. All right. Let's be clear. The state attorney's office never interviewed William McNeil. They did, however, try to excuse the fact that Officer Bowers failed to disclose his unlawful distractionary strike. They also tried to decriminalize Officer Bowers punching Mr. McNeil outside the vehicle, and completely failed to mention the officer slamming Mr. McNeil's face into the asphalt while he was under control and in custody. Furthermore, they ignored the multiple injuries, including a broken tooth, a concussion, and multiple stitches caused by the officer's use of force. Finally, the memo asks us to ignore our own eyes by accepting the officer's excuse that Mr. McNeil was reaching for a knife in the floorboard when he is never seen reaching for anything in either the body cam video or the video posted on social media. The simple fact is that this memo ignores exactly the kind of excessive force and false reporting that resulted in the United States Department of Justice indicting Camden County's Sheriff's Deputy Buck Aldridge. It only further illustrates why use of force cases involving the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office need to be conducted by an independent agency that is not beholden to either the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office or the state's attorney. Otherwise, they're going to keep getting away with it. Like I said, of course, can depend on Department of Justice and any federal action. Because what's going on right now should give you the understanding of why you can't. And back with more. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Ruth, that comes from Jorge the Vanguard. I'll send you a couple of his videos. All right. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This is The Open Eye. And clips of white men wilding out and acts of bold-faced racism is on the rise. There was once a time when white men who were inclined to be racist would hide their real feelings about black people. Now they don't have to. Oh yeah, there was a time right after the civil rights movement, what have you, Black Power movement, where, being boldly and outly racist caused you problems. That started easing up when Ronald Reagan, the demon deity of the Republican Party, roasted him, made a double sodomizing with a pitchfork, because he made it okay. It was something Jimmy Carter's wife Rosalind said. Reagan made it acceptable to be racist. Now there seems to be an epidemic sweeping the nation, and it targets a very niche segment of the population. Some white men, mainly those who work in government, have seemingly lost either their ability or their willingness to hide their racism. Remember Trent Lott got up and said some stuff about the Confederacy wasn't so bad or some crap, and he just ran out of office. That don't happen now. And now we see this, most poignantly with police officers and even city council members. Ever since the Orange disaster essentially declared martial law in Washington, D.C., some of the cops are out down there acting a fool. We thought stop and frisk was a New York City police tactic, but it is alive and well in Chocolate City. And that's why they're there. It gets worse. Many are also unapologetically racially profiling black citizens by going into their neighborhoods and harassing the people there. It's not just happening in the District of Columbia. City council meetings have been a place where racism rears its ugly head. There was this back and forth in the theoretically liberal state of California. A police officer who gets paid over $200,000 a year told a black activist that he had to leave a meeting because his baby was being too disruptive. And again in California, the black mayor of California City made a controversial request. He asked the municipality he serves to cover a $1,000 fee for him joining the African American Mayors Association. A verbal kerfuffle ensued, and 2 members of the city council, both white men, resigned. Good riddance. Caught myself there. But it's not just these isolated cases. All over the country, you're going to find white men engaged in racially problematic behavior. Why? The answer is so obvious that it's almost embarrassing. It's the Trump effect. The 47th president has said and done so many things that many feel could have easily gotten him counseled back in the day. But instead of that happening, he seemingly keeps winning. In the past 2 years, Trump was found liable of sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll. And he was convicted of paying hush money to an actress in adult films. And here he is. Was he viewed as a disgrace? No. He was reelected to the presidency. As a result, many white cops and lower level elected officials are emboldened to be on their worst behavior. There was once a time when white men who were inclined to be racist would hide their feelings. They don't do that no more. What are they doing? They're simply following the example of the creep in the White House. But let me remind you of something. He has Secret Service security. Your ass don't get him mixed. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. All right. Let's keep it moving. Yeah. I don't know if you heard of this Jillian Michaels, who I got on, I think it was on CNN. She on CNN, how do I say, minimalizing the experience of black people in slavery. It started out as a conversation on the arts, and it devolved into a messy argument about slavery and who benefited from it during the August 13th roundtable discussion. It was on CNN Newsnight. With one panelist accusing Abby Phillip of racializing the discussion. Now, the roundtable guests are talking about Donald Trump's latest effort at controlling the distinguished Kennedy Center Awards after Trump announced his apparent hand-picked group of honorees on Wednesday, including Sylvester Stallone, George Strait, Gloria Gaynor, and the band Kiss. A Democratic strategist on the panel said Trump's efforts at remaking the Kennedy Center in his image were part of a larger plan to change culture. Trump has already initiated reviews of Smithsonian Institution exhibits, something he did shortly after the start of his second term in office earlier this year. Have you looked at some of these things that are being reviewed? MAGA supporter, fitness trainer, and The Biggest Loser TV series alum, Jillian Michaels asked. Bristling when panelist Julie Roginski brought up that Trump had demanded a study how the Smithsonian tells the story of slavery in America. And of course, Michaels defended white people, suggesting they were not wholly to blame for slavery, and lashing out at Philip by claiming she racialized the argument. Oh yeah, slavery was a bad thing that we should talk about. And Michaels insisted Trump is not whitewashing slavery. He's not. And you cannot tie the imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race. BS. Which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. Another panelist pointed out slavery in America was white supremacy. Oh, well, she shot back. Only 2% of white Americans own slaves. So, it was a system of white supremacy. Yeah, and this hussy just went on and on defending slavery and how uncomfortable it was for whites to go in the Smithsonian Institute, the Smithsonian Institute, the section, African American Museum. Here's something that's crazy. She has adopted a black Haitian daughter. I think somebody need to call Child Protective Services. Because what is this child being taught by this racist ass hussy? And not only what is she being taught, but how is she being treated? What was her motivation for adopting this black child? Because I've seen some of these white people adopting black children, and they wind up treating them like slaves. If they don't treat them like slaves, they mess their minds up so bad that these people either become coons or really bitter about what they're dealing with. And who is supposed to be raising them? It is a response to this hussy's discomfort about her history. The National Museum of African American History and Culture stands as a powerful statement to the intricate and enduring story of black people in the United States. Its purpose, however, is often misunderstood by those who view its content through a lens of personal discomfort. It is crucial to understand that this institution is not a slavery museum, nor is it an indictment of any single individual. It is a monument to the perseverance, ingenuity, contributions, and tribulations of African Americans. The museum's responsibility is not to comfort a dominant narrative, but to accurately and unflinchingly educate all people about a history that shaped a nation. A central argument against the museum's presentation seems to be that it makes some visitors, particularly white visitors, feel uncomfortable. This reaction is a failure of empathy and perspective. Historical museums are not designed to be pleasant diversions. They're intended to provoke thought and inspire reflection, the discomfort one might feel when confronted with the truth of historical atrocities, the brutal system of chattel slavery and the violence used to enforce it, pales in comparison to the trauma experienced by those who endured it. To be offended by the historical facts presented is to place one's own fleeting emotional state above the suffering of millions of human beings. The horrors of the Middle Passage and the dehumanizing condition of captivity were not merely uncomfortable. They were profoundly traumatic and life-altering realities. The impulse to reject this historical narrative is particularly hypocritical when juxtaposed with the veneration of Confederate monuments across the country. And those monuments would celebrate figures and a cause dedicated to upholding the institution of slavery are defended as essential to preserving history. Yet the truth presented in a museum designed to educate about the very same history is decried as an unfair attack. The selective acceptance of history reveals a profound moral inconsistency. One cannot simultaneously honor those who inflicted horrors while being unwilling to acknowledge the full extent of the truth about the horrors themselves. A complete historical understanding requires a full accounting of all its parts, even the ones that are difficult to confront. Ultimately, the goal of the National Museum of African American History and Culture is not to soothe or to apologize for historical facts. It is to foster a deeper consciousness and shift perspectives. To walk through its halls and feel nothing but a minor personal discomfort reveals a moral and emotional disconnect. A truly healthy and empathetic response should be one of profound recognition and even trauma. A feeling that inspires a new level of understanding and a commitment to ensuring such atrocities are never repeated. The museum stands as a vital educational tool, and its effectiveness is measured not by how comfortable it makes its visitors, but how truthfully it portrays its subject matter. I don't give a damn about your comfort. And if the reason that you want to whitewash this history is because it makes you uncomfortable and you can't recognize the trauma that these people suffered and still suffer, because trauma is in our DNA. Something wrong with your ass. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dope and I. All right, Patrice Gibbs, your third eye optometrist here. For those that keeping track, the Tangerine Tyrant put himself in charge of the Kennedy Center, and I mentioned that earlier. Then invited himself to host the awards. Then told himself, wait a minute, he is president, and does he really have time? But he humbly accepted the offer from himself before praising himself for honoring himself like no one else would. And I'm not making that up. That crap actually happened. This week he announced that Attorney General Pamela Bondi is now in charge of the DC Metropolitan Police Department. And you know what? The whole world is collectively underreacting to Trump's attempted military takeover of DC. You know what? This is literally what Hitler did. I remember the last time there was massive crime in DC, not a single member of the National Guard was deployed. Not a single one. Now, if you need any more proof that the DC police takeover is theater, because I seen someone walking around, they didn't know what the hell to do. But I tell you what, 20 cops showed up at a sandwich store's home to rearrest them after he already appeared in court. 20 cops! Not sure how anyone who thinks murder is a problem in DC can defend this spectacle. But they will. Okay? And the Orange Disasters lies about crimes in cities with large populations and nothing more than a setup for his authoritarian regime. His latest anti-crime crusade against Democratic-led, predominantly black cities is a blatant lie. The 34-count felon turned grifter in chief doesn't care about crime. He's a criminal. And his latest propaganda push stand right up there and lie on the news. You know, and I think it was CNN that disputed his statistics right there on the air. Every lie he told, they said, nope, that ain't so. Crime is down in D.C., crime is down in Baltimore, crime is down in Chicago. Mm-hmm. His fixation on cities like D.C., Baltimore, Oakland, and Chicago has nothing to do with reducing crime and everything to do with undermining democracy, targeting black political leadership, and manufacturing a false narrative that paints black and brown communities as violent, dangerous, and in need of rescue in order to justify himself illegally taking control. See all the crap that he's been doing to irritate us, get us to speak out, to get us to want to stand up. None of the crap worked. And he said, okay, I'm just going to go in their cities and dog them out. Mm-hmm. That's just his plan. See, this all comes from, 2025. Of course, the over-policing of black neighborhoods, which is nothing new, is not just about intimidation. It's about filling prison beds when immigrant labor won't suffice. That's what it's about. Filling those privatized prisons, those prisons for profit. And then using the law, 13th Amendment, slavery is illegal unless duly convicted of a crime. Here you are in jail on some propped up charges. Yeah. And then put your ass out in the plantation. Mm-hmm. The Project 2025 was not just abstract. It's a clear and present danger to black America. civil rights. It guts anti-discrimination laws and bars federal agencies from collecting racial demographic data, making it nearly impossible to enforce workplace protections. In education, it dismantled the Department of Education, allowing discriminatory discipline to run rampant and making higher education even less accessible to black students. Political power, by overhauling the census and criminalizing election-related activity, the plan is to suppress the black vote and destabilize multiracial democracy. The criminal legal system, it expands the racially biased death penalty and abolishes consent decrees that hold police accountable for civil rights violations. Housing, enhance affordable housing programs to states with histories of racial discrimination, threatening millions of black low-income families. And this one, you need to pay attention to. And that's environmental justice. It shutters the Office of Environmental Justice, allowing environmental racism to further poison black communities. What we are witnessing is a modernized version of post-Reconstruction America, when Jim Crow laws stripped newly freed black people of their constitutional rights, locking them out of political power, economic opportunity, and social equality. It's the same playbook. Change the laws, control the narrative, suppress the vote, and weaponize the justice system. Well, I'm making note. That we are the biggest criminals in the country. Not so. Even criminalizing homelessness. You know, in Nazi Germany, homelessness was criminalized. Homelessness was called vagrants. Homeless people were called vagrants and tramps. Social services were limited or discontinued. In 1933, large-scale roundups began targeting homeless people in Germany. In 1938, a cleaning operation sent 11,000 homeless people to labor camps. That's their plan. Most of them never made it back out. If this sounds familiar, it is. Criminalizing homelessness while governing social services and pushing people out into the street. Damn. Oh yeah, these people are something else. While claiming that we are the biggest criminals. Because see, what they do is they get these statistics, these made up statistics. 1350. 13% of the population commits 50% of the crimes. See, they don't look at the conviction statistics. While public discourse often highlights specific crime rates, a broader view reveals a more complex picture across various offenses. Yeah. The idea that statistics about crime and race are inherently racist is a contention that deserves a close examination because, excuse me, these statistics are often propaganda, the propaganda, and it's falsehood. Because you look at drunk driving, white individuals account for a significant percentage of drunk driving arrests. In 2022, 69% of all DUI arrests were white individuals. Drunk driving contributes to a substantial number of fatalities annually, with over 10,000 deaths reported each year due to alcohol-impaired driving. 69% of DUI arrests. Mass shootings, come on. From May of 1982 to May of 2024, 82 out of 147 mass shootings, that's 56%, were carried out by white individuals. And if it weren't white individuals, white adjacent individuals. Hate crimes, get real. White offenders are disproportionately responsible for hate crimes. That's a statistical fact. 70% of reported hate crime offenders were white. These crimes targeted various groups, including religious minorities such as Jewish and Muslims. And of course, black families, creating an environment of fear and insecurity. This one really trips me out. Animal cruelty. These same people that will raise money to bring a dog out of the Sudan or out of Gaza, all right? When studies report cases indicate that white youth commit animal cruelty at a higher rate compared to black counterparts. Such acts of violence against animals are deeply disturbing and can be indicators of other behavioral issues. Now, you know who had a habit of animal cruelty? Trump's chief of staff, Stephen Miller. It's one sick individual. And let us not forget what they do over in Europe. What was it, in Sweden or Switzerland, one of those countries, where they had to outlaw animal brothels. What kind of sick goddamn people are you? Corporate fraud, often perpetrated by white executives, results in staggering financial losses. Estimates suggest that corporate fraud costs the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars annually, impacting pensions, Social Security, and individual paychecks. When discussing crime, it's essential to consider the full spectrum of offenses and the demographics associated with them, rather than focus solely on a narrow set of statistics. A comprehensive understanding requires acknowledging all facets of criminal activity across various demographics. Pay special attention to the white population. And I'm going to tell you something. Crime rates plummeted overnight after a 34-time convicted felon left for Alaska. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. Hey, Vaughn, I see you, bro. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right. I remember it was a while back, not that long ago, I was in the printing business, and one of my customers introduced me to their daughter. And after the daughter left, they told me, don't you get involved with her. Don't you mess with her. When your mama tells me you ain't ish, who said this? I'm gonna tell you. Oh yes, he's an idiot with zero common sense and no social skills. but he is my son. I just hope he never gets into politics. He'd be a disaster. You know who said that? Trump's mama. She told y'all, this fool ain't nothing. Yeah. She told y'all that. I remember when he first got in office, some of our melanin deficient citizens were embarrassed the first time around. They, put out this thing, "Dear world, we apologize for Donald Trump. He's an embarrassment to this country, and many of us are working hard to see that he doesn't get reelected." Well, he did. And that was signed by sane Americans. Who the hell are they? Cut the crap. When did Americans become sane? Trump is not an embarrassment. Trump is a revelation. This is the same country with 59 million stupid-ass Americans reelected George W. Bush. Yeah. And Bush recently has come out like he wasn't a piss-poor president. Because somebody, infinitely worse than him is now in the White House. We don't get it mixed. George W. was a piece of crap. This is the same racist-ass country that re-elected Ronald Reagan made roast in hell. Yeah. That elected Ronald Reagan twice. Like I said, made roast in hell, made a devil sodomize him with a pitchfork. Trump is not an embarrassment. Trump is as American as apple pie. The Star-Spangled Banner, lynchings, the KKK, murderous police, big pharma drug dealers, big oil pollution, mass incarceration, robber baron bankers, land grabbing corporations, the assassination of black leaders, racism, and greed. Yeah, that's America. WHGE 95.3 FM. Dope and I. All right. My goodness, time flies, even when I'm late. As heard. Let me tell you something. Systemic racism operates much like functionalism. It's deeply embedded within the fabric of American society. And it's through 5 elements: religion, education, economy, media, and culture. It's through these 5 elements that the fabric of our society is made. And I think one of the biggest problems, of course, is the media. And with understanding these 5 elements illustrates that racism is not merely individual, isolated, it is profoundly institutionalized and systemic. It filters from one societal dimension to another, creating a destructive cycle. After enduring this grinding mill of systemic racism, individuals become fathers. But tragically, many end up as absentee fathers. Okay? Your religion makes you believe that our people are cursed. The religion that was forced on you. Yeah. We are so profoundly poisoned by this system that we inadvertently perpetrate the same narrative of self-hatred and self-destruction. This is America. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. All right. Thanks for joining me on The Open Eye. Hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. And as I always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority. Treat you as an option. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Yeah. Remember that history is circular. All right. The devil's time is short. Global African supremacy is coming.